The yellow school bus stopped in front of Westside High School on a cool Monday morning. John Carter took a deep breath as he looked out the window at his new school. This was his first day, and he was starting in the middle of the fall semester. The brick building looked like many others he had seen before. Students rushed in through the main doors, laughing and talking in groups. John had been through this many times before, but it never got easier. John stepped off the bus and pulled, his backpack higher on his shoulder. He wore a plain gray hoodie that was one size too big and regular blue jeans. His short brown hair was neatly cut, and his green eyes scanned the area carefully. At 17, John was taller than most boys his age. His body was strong and fit from years of training, but his loose clothes hid this fact well. Just another school, he told himself quietly. Just get through the year. The main office was easy to find. A kind woman with glasses smiled at him from behind the desk. Her name tag read, Mrs. Brown. "You must be John Carter," she said. "We've been expecting you. Welcome to Westside High." John nodded politely. "Thank you, ma'am." Mrs. Brown printed his class schedule and gave him a small map of the school. "Your first class is American History with Mr. Garcia in room 203. Do you need someone to show you around?" "No, thank you. I can find my way," John replied. As he left the office, John studied the map. The school was laid out in a simple pattern. He had 15 minutes before his first class, so he decided to walk around and get familiar with the building. The hallways were full of students talking, laughing, and getting things from their lockers. Many of them looked at John as he passed. He was used to this. Being the new kid always meant being stared at. John kept his face calm and his eyes forward. Room 203 was on the second floor. John found it easily and walked in. Most of the seats were already taken. The teacher, a man with dark hair and a friendly face, noticed him right away. "Ah, you must be our new student," Mr. Garcia said. "John Carter, right?" "Yes, sir," John answered. "Welcome to American History. There's an empty seat in the back row next to Ben." John nodded and walked to the back of the classroom. A boy with blonde hair and glasses raised his hand slightly. This must be Ben. John sat down next to him. "Hey," Ben whispered. "I'm Ben Miller." "John Carter," John replied with a small nod. "Where are you from?" Ben asked. Before John could answer, Mr. Garcia started the class. "Okay, everyone, let's continue our discussion from Friday about the Civil War." John was glad for the interruption. He didn't like talking about himself, especially about where he was from. The truth was complicated. His father was in the military, and they had moved 6 times in the last 4 years. John had lived in 3 different countries and 4 different states. He never stayed in one place long enough to call it home. The morning classes went by quickly. John was good at schoolwork. He had learned to pay attention and study hard no matter where he was. By lunchtime, he had already answered questions correctly in both history and math class. A few students had introduced themselves, but John kept his responses short and polite. The cafeteria was large and noisy. John got his lunch tray and looked for an empty table. He noticed Ben waving at him from across the room. "John, over here," Ben called. John walked over to Ben's table. There were 3 other students sitting there. "Guys, this is John. He's new," Ben said. "John, these are my friends. That's Zach, Paula, and Nina." "Nice to meet you," John said as he sat down. "So where did you move from?" Paula asked. She had dark curly hair and a friendly smile. "Virginia," John answered. It wasn't exactly a lie. Virginia was the last place they had lived in the United States, though they had spent the past year overseas. "Military kid?" Zach asked, noticing John's short haircut and straight posture. John nodded. "My dad's in the Army." "That must be tough moving around a lot," Nina said. She had straight blonde hair and spoke softly. "You get used to it," John replied with a small shrug. As they ate lunch, John mostly listened to the others talk about teachers, upcoming tests, and weekend plans. He was grateful that they didn't ask him too many questions. Ben and his friends seemed nice, but John was careful not to get too friendly too quickly. He had learned that lesson the hard way. Halfway through lunch, John noticed a commotion at a table across the cafeteria. A tall, muscular boy with dark hair was standing over a smaller student who looked scared. The tall boy was flanked by 3 friends, all wearing similar leather jackets. "Who's that?" John asked, nodding toward the scene. Ben followed his gaze and frowned. "That's Kevin Ross and his gang. The school's self-appointed rulers. They think they own this place." John watched as Kevin grabbed the smaller boy's lunch tray and dumped it on the floor. A teacher on lunch duty started walking toward them, and Kevin and his friends quickly moved away, laughing. "They pick on anyone they think is weak," Paula explained. "The teachers try to stop them, but Kevin's dad is some big shot in town, so he never gets in serious trouble." John said nothing, but his eyes followed Kevin and his friends as they strutted across the cafeteria. One of them, a boy with red hair, noticed John watching and nudged Kevin. Kevin turned and stared directly at John. John didn't look away. For a few seconds, they locked eyes across the room. "Don't make eye contact," Ben whispered urgently. "That's like challenging him." John finally looked down at his food, but he could feel Kevin's eyes still on him. "Great," Zach muttered. "Now you're on his radar." The bell rang, ending lunch period. As John stood up, he noticed Kevin whispering something to a pretty girl with long brown hair. She looked over at John and then back to Kevin with a frown. The afternoon classes went smoothly. John had English, chemistry, and PE. In chemistry, the teacher paired John with a girl named Lisa Miller. "Any relation to Ben Miller?" John asked as they set up their lab equipment. "He's my brother," Lisa said with a smile. She had the same blonde hair as Ben, but her eyes were blue instead of brown. "He mentioned meeting you at lunch." John and Lisa worked well together. She was smart and good at explaining things John had missed from earlier classes. Unlike most people, she didn't ask too many personal questions, which John appreciated. "You're good at this," Lisa said, as John correctly mixed the chemicals for their experiment. "I had a good teacher at my last school," John explained. At the end of the day, John went to his assigned locker to put away some books. As he closed the locker door, he sensed someone behind him. He turned to find Kevin and 2 of his friends standing there. "You're the new kid," Kevin said. It wasn't a question. "John Carter," John replied calmly. "I saw you staring at me at lunch," Kevin said, stepping closer. "Got something to say?" John didn't back away. He kept his voice even. "No, nothing to say." "Good, because I run things around here, and the sooner you understand that, the better." John remained silent, his face showing no emotion. He had dealt with boys like Kevin before. They fed on fear and reaction. Kevin's eyes narrowed at John's calm. "You think you're tough, new boy?" "I think I just want to go home after a long first day," John replied. For a moment, tension filled the air. Then a teacher walked by and Kevin stepped back. "See you around, Carter," Kevin said with a smirk. John watched them walk away. He knew this wasn't over. It never was with people like Kevin. But John had faced worse. Much worse. As he walked out of the school building, John saw Lisa waiting by the bus area. "How was your first day?" she asked as he approached. "Interesting," John replied. "I met your brother and his friends. They seem nice." "They are," Lisa agreed. "Ben said you had a staring contest with Kevin Ross at lunch." John shrugged, not intentionally. "Be careful with Kevin," Lisa warned. "He's got a mean streak and he doesn't like being challenged." "I'll keep that in mind," John said. His bus arrived and he nodded goodbye to Lisa. As the bus pulled away, from Westside High, John looked back at the building. His first day had been typical in many ways. New classes, new faces, and the usual school bully. But something felt different this time. Maybe it was because his father had promised they would stay until John graduated. Maybe it was because, for once, John had decided he was tired of always being the quiet new kid who faded into the background. Whatever it was, John knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges. And for the first time in a long time, he wasn't dreading it. 2 weeks passed since John's first day at Westside High. He settled into a routine and kept a low profile. Every morning he woke up at 5 to do his workout before school. Push-ups, sit-ups, and quiet stretching exercises in his bedroom. His father was usually already awake, preparing for his day at the military base. How's the new school? His father asked one morning over a quick breakfast. Fine, John replied. Nothing special. Colonel Carter looked at his son over his coffee cup. Any trouble? John knew what his father meant. In their last school, John had gotten into a fight defending a smaller student from bullies. The principal had called it self-defense, but it had added tension to their already complicated lives. No trouble, John said. Just keeping my head down. His father nodded, satisfied. Good. We need this posting to work out, John. No more moving around for a while. John nodded. He understood what was at stake. His mother had left them 3 years ago, tired of the constant moving and military life. It was just him and his dad now, and they both needed stability. At school, John did well, in his classes. His teachers were impressed with his work, especially in subjects like math and history. In chemistry, he and Lisa Miller had become the top lab partners in class. You're making me look good, Lisa told him with a smile as they finished another perfect experiment. You were already good, John replied. I'm just following your lead, Lisa laughed. Always so modest. Where did you learn all this stuff anyway? John shrugged. Different schools teach different things. I pick up what I can. Lisa seemed to accept this answer, but John could tell she was curious about him. Unlike most people, though, she respected his privacy. This made her easy to talk to, and John found himself looking forward to chemistry class. The only dark spot in John's school days was Kevin Ross and his gang. Since their first meeting, Kevin had made small but annoying moves against John, a shoulder check in the hallway, knocking books off John's desk, whispered threats when teachers weren't looking. John ignored these things, which seemed to annoy Kevin more than any reaction would have. One day at lunch, Ben invited John to sit with him and his friends again. We're having a party this weekend, Zach announced. My parents are out of town. You should come, John. Thanks, but I can't, John said. I promised my dad I'd help him with some things around the house. Come on, Paula insisted. It'll be fun. Everyone will be there. Everyone except Kevin Ross and his goons, Ben added. They weren't invited. John was about to respond when he noticed Kevin and his friends entering the cafeteria. With them was the pretty girl with long brown hair that John had seen on his first day. She was holding Kevin's hand. Who's that girl with Kevin? John asked. Amber White, Nina replied. Kevin's girlfriend. She's actually not as bad as he is, but she goes along with whatever he does. John watched as Amber laughed at something Kevin said. She seemed normal enough, not like someone who would date a bully. But John had learned long ago that people were complicated, and appearances could be deceiving. The next day in PE class, the teacher announced they would be doing wrestling units. Boys were paired up to practice basic moves on mats in the gym. John was paired with a boy named Steve, who was friendly but not very athletic. I've never done this before, Steve admitted as they faced each other on the mat. Just follow the coach's instructions, John advised. It's mostly about leverage, not strength. As they practiced the moves, John was careful not to use his full skill. He let Steve get the hang of the basic holds and escapes, offering tips when needed. The teacher walked around, correcting form and giving advice. On the other side of the gym, Kevin was wrestling with a smaller boy named Greg. Instead of teaching Greg the moves, Kevin was using his strength to pin Greg painfully to the mat. The smaller boy was wincing but trying not to show his discomfort. Ross, the coach called out. Ease up. This is practice, not the Olympics. Kevin eased his grip slightly but smirked at Greg when the coach walked away. John watched this from the corner of his eye, feeling a familiar anger rise inside him. He pushed it down. Not his business. Not his fight. After class, as John was changing in the locker room, he overheard Kevin talking to his friends. Did you see Carter in wrestling today? Kevin said loudly. Letting that wimp Steve push him around, what a joke. John ignored the comment and continued changing his clothes. He knew Kevin was trying to provoke him. As John closed his locker and turned to leave, Kevin stepped in his way. Hey, new boy, I'm talking to you. I heard you, John said calmly. I just didn't have anything to say back. Kevin's face reddened. You think you're better than everyone else, don't you? Walking around all quiet, acting like you're too good to talk to people. I don't think I'm better than anyone, John replied. I'm just trying to get through the day like everyone else. Kevin stepped closer, his chest almost touching John's. I don't like your attitude. Maybe you need to learn some respect. John didn't step back. He met Kevin's gaze steadily but kept his hands relaxed at his sides. Respect is earned, not forced. The locker room had gone quiet. Other boys watched the confrontation, wondering what would happen. The tension was broken when the coach walked in. What's going on here? He asked, looking between John and Kevin. Nothing, Coach, Kevin said, stepping back. Just welcoming the new kid to the wrestling team. The coach looked suspicious but didn't push it. Hit the showers, everyone. Bell. Rings in 5 minutes. As John walked away, Kevin called after him. This isn't over, Carter. John knew it wasn't. Something was building, and sooner or later it would come to a head. He had hoped to avoid trouble at this school, but it seemed trouble had found him anyway. That afternoon, John stayed late to make up a test he had missed in English class. The school was quiet as he walked down the empty hallway toward the exit. As he turned a corner, he almost bumped into Lisa, who was carrying a stack of books. John, you scared me, she said with a small laugh. What are you doing here so late? Makeup test, he explained. What about you? Library duty. I volunteer there after school on Wednesdays. They walked together toward the main doors. Outside, dark clouds gathered, promising rain. Looks like a storm is coming, Lisa said. Do you need a ride home? My car is in the parking lot. John was about to accept when he saw Kevin's car parked nearby. Kevin and his friends Dan, Pete, and Eric were leaning against it, watching the school entrance. When they spotted John, Kevin straightened up and nudged his friends. Thanks, but I'll walk, John told Lisa. It's not far. Lisa followed his gaze and frowned when she saw Kevin. Is he giving you trouble? Nothing I can't handle, John assured her. You shouldn't walk if it's going to rain, Lisa insisted. I can drive you past them. They won't bother you if you're with me. John considered this. He didn't want to drag Lisa into his problems with Kevin, but he also didn't want a confrontation today. Before he could decide, Kevin and his friends started walking toward them. You should go, John told Lisa quietly. I'll be fine. Lisa looked, uncertain but nodded. Be careful, John. Kevin doesn't like being ignored. She hurried to her car as the first drops of rain began to fall. John watched her drive away, then turned to face Kevin and his friends. They had spread out, forming a loose half-circle around him. Well, well, Kevin said with a smirk. Look who's all alone. No teachers around to save you now, Carter. John sighed. I don't want any trouble, Kevin. Should have thought about that before you disrespected me in front of everyone, Kevin replied. But don't worry, we're just going to have a friendly chat about how things work at this school. The rain was falling harder now, soaking through John's hoodie. He looked at each of the 4 boys surrounding him. Kevin was the leader, clearly the most dangerous. Dan was tall and thin, trying to look tough but shifting nervously. Pete was shorter but solid, with the build of a football player. Eric was, standing slightly back from the others, as if not fully committed to whatever was about to happen. John knew he could turn and run back into the school, but that would only delay the inevitable. Sooner or later, he would have to face this. So, John said, his voice calm despite the tension, what do you want to talk about? The rain fell harder as John stood facing Kevin and his 3 friends in the school parking lot. Water dripped from John's hair into his eyes, but he didn't blink. His hoodie was soaked through, clinging to his shoulders and revealing more of his athletic build than usual. I asked what you want to talk about, John repeated, his voice steady despite the cold rain. Kevin stepped forward, water dripping from his leather jacket. I want to talk about respect. You've been at this school for 2 weeks and you still haven't learned who's in charge. Is that what this is about? John asked. You want me to bow down to you or something? Kevin's face twisted with anger. Don't get smart with me. You think you're special because you're quiet and the teachers like you? This is my school. John kept his expression neutral. I don't think I'm special. I just want to finish school and graduate. That's all. And what about Lisa Miller? Kevin asked with a sneer. I've seen how you look at her. John frowned. Lisa is my lab partner and friend. That's it. Kevin laughed, but there was no humor in it. Everyone knows she's into you. Amber says Lisa talks about you all the time. John hadn't known this. He thought Lisa was just being friendly because they worked well together in class. The idea that she might like him more than that was surprising, but it didn't change the situation he was in now. Look, John said, trying to diffuse the tension. Whatever you think is happening, it's not. I'm not trying to challenge you or take anything from you. Too late for that, Kevin replied. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a switchblade knife. With a flick of his wrist, the blade snapped open, gleaming even in the dim, rainy light. You need to learn a lesson. John's body tensed at the sight of the knife, but his face remained calm. He had been in dangerous situations before, but never at a school in America. This was different, more personal. Put the knife away, Kevin, John said quietly. This isn't worth getting into serious trouble. Shut up. Kevin snapped. You think I'm scared of getting in trouble? My dad owns half this town. Nothing happens to me here. Dan and Pete moved to either side of John, trying to block any escape routes. Eric stayed back, looking nervous as he saw the knife. Kevin, man, maybe we should just rough him up a bit, Eric suggested. The knife is taking it too far. Shut up, Eric, Kevin said without looking away from John. He needs to understand what happens when someone disrespects me. John assessed his situation quickly. 4 against 1, with one knife that he could see. The parking lot was empty except for their cars. The school doors were about 30 yards behind him, but they were probably locked by now. Running wasn't a good option, and it would only delay the inevitable. John made his decision. He had been training for years in various martial arts, learning from military instructors at bases around the world. His father had insisted on it after John was bullied at their first overseas posting. The training wasn't for showing off or starting fights. It was for protection, for situations exactly like this. Last chance, John said, his voice now taking on a harder edge. Walk away and we can forget this happened. Kevin laughed and waved the knife. You're in no position to give chances. Get him, guys. Dan moved first, throwing a wild punch at John's head. John stepped inside the punch with surprising speed, redirecting Dan's arm and using his momentum to push him off balance. Dan stumbled forward, slipping on the wet pavement and falling hard to his knees. Pete came at John from the other side, trying to grab him in a bear hug. John twisted his body at the last moment, delivering a precise strike to Pete's solar plexus. Pete doubled over, gasping for breath as the air left his lungs. Eric hesitated, seeing his 2 friends taken down so quickly. What the hell, he muttered, his eyes wide with surprise. Kevin's face showed shock, but it quickly turned to rage. He lunged forward with the knife, aiming for John's stomach. John sidestepped the attack and grabbed Kevin's wrist with both hands. In one smooth motion, he twisted the wrist while applying pressure to a specific nerve point. Kevin cried out in pain as his fingers involuntarily opened. The knife fell to the wet pavement with a clatter. John kicked it away, sending it sliding under a nearby car. You're going to pay for that, Kevin shouted, trying to pull his arm free from John's grip. John released him with a small push, making Kevin stumble backward. It's over. You lost your knife. Just go home. But Kevin wasn't ready to give up. He charged at John again, throwing a punch aimed at his face. John blocked the punch and countered with a palm strike to Kevin's chest, careful to use only enough force to push him back without causing serious injury. Kevin staggered but stayed on his feet. Dan had gotten up from the ground and now rushed at John from behind. Without looking, John sensed the attack and stepped to the side, causing Dan to crash into Kevin instead. Pete was still on his knees, trying to catch his breath. Eric stood, frozen, watching the scene with disbelief. What's going on here? A voice called out from across the parking lot. John turned to see Mr. Garcia, his history teacher, running toward them with an umbrella. He must have been working late and heard the commotion. Break it up, Mr. Garcia shouted as he got closer. What do you think you're doing? Kevin quickly put on an innocent face. Nothing, Mr. Garcia, just talking with the new kid. Mr. Garcia looked at the scene skeptically, John's calm stance, Kevin and Dan's disheveled appearance, and Pete still gasping on the ground told a different story. "Carter, are you all right?" Mr. Garcia asked. "Yes, sir," John replied. "There was a misunderstanding, but I think it's cleared up now." Mr. Garcia looked around, his eyes narrowing. "Where's the knife, Kevin?" Kevin's face paled. "What knife? I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me," Mr. Garcia said firmly. "I saw it from my classroom window. That's why I came running out here." John pointed under the car where he had kicked the knife. "It's under there, sir." Mr. Garcia knelt down and retrieved the switchblade. He stood up, looking very serious. "All of you to the principal's office, now." "The office is closed, sir," Eric pointed out. "It's after hours." "Then we're calling your parents and the police," Mr. Garcia replied. "Bringing a weapon to school is a serious offense, Kevin." Kevin's confident expression finally cracked. "You can't call the police. My dad will kill me." "You should have thought about that before pulling a knife on another student," Mr. Garcia said. He took out his phone and dialed a number. "Principal Scott?" "Yes, it's Garcia. We have a situation in the parking lot involving a weapon. I need you to come back to the school right away." While Mr. Garcia was on the phone, John stood quietly in the rain. His mind was racing. This was exactly the kind of trouble his father had warned him to avoid. Now there would be questions about how he had disarmed Kevin so easily, how he had taken down 2 other boys without breaking a sweat. His father would not be happy. As if reading his thoughts, Mr. Garcia turned to John after ending his call. "Those were some impressive moves, Carter. Where did you learn to fight like that?" John hesitated. "My dad is in the military, sir. He made sure I could protect myself." Mr. Garcia nodded slowly. "Well, it's a good thing you could. This could have ended much worse." He looked at the knife in his hand. "But we still need to sort this out properly." Within 20 minutes, Principal Scott arrived at the school, followed shortly by a police car with flashing lights. The boys were taken to the principal's office, where they waited in silence. John texted his father, keeping the message brief. "Trouble at school, not my fault. Police involved, need you here." The reply came quickly. "On my way." As they waited, John noticed Kevin growing more nervous by the minute. The tough act was gone, replaced by genuine fear. John almost felt sorry for him. "My dad's gonna kill me," Kevin muttered again, more to himself than anyone else. "You should have thought about that before bringing a knife to school," John replied quietly. Kevin looked up at him, his eyes showing confusion. "How did you do that? Take us all down so easily?" John shrugged. "Like I told Mr. Garcia, my dad made sure I could protect myself." "Who are you?" Kevin asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Before John could answer, the office door opened, and the adults began to file in. The principal's office was crowded with people. Principal Scott sat behind his desk, looking stern. Officer Wilson, a police officer with gray hair and a serious face, stood near the door. Mr. Garcia leaned against a filing cabinet. The boys sat in chairs facing the principal's desk. Kevin's father, Mr. Ross, a tall man in an expensive suit, paced back and forth behind Kevin's chair. John's father, Colonel Carter, stood at attention beside John's chair. He wore his military uniform, having come straight from the base. His face was calm, but John could see the tension in his jaw. "Let me understand this," Principal Scott said, looking at the switchblade knife on his desk. "Kevin, you brought this weapon to school and threatened John with it?" "It wasn't like that," Kevin mumbled, not meeting anyone's eyes. "We were just messing around." "Messing around?" Mr. Ross exploded. "With a knife? Are you out of your mind? Kevin?" Kevin sank lower in his chair. His father turned to Principal Scott. "I assure you, Principal Scott, I had no idea my son had this knife. This is completely unacceptable." "It's more than unacceptable," Officer Wilson said. "It's a criminal offense to bring a weapon to school and threaten another student." Mr. Ross's face paled. "Surely we can handle this internally. Kevin has never been in serious trouble before." Principal Scott raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Ross, your son has been in my office 12 times this year alone for bullying other students. We've been lenient because of your position in the community, but this crosses a line. What exactly happened? Colonel Carter asked, speaking for the first time. His voice was quiet but had the clear authority of someone used to being obeyed. Mr. Garcia stepped forward. From what I saw from my classroom window, Kevin and his friends had John surrounded in the parking lot. Kevin pulled out the knife and John defended himself. Quite effectively, I might add. All eyes turned to John. He sat straight in his chair, hands folded in his lap. Is that accurate, John? Principal Scott asked. Yes, sir, John replied. Kevin and his friends were waiting for me after school. When Kevin pulled out the knife, I disarmed him. How exactly did you do that? Officer Wilson asked, suddenly interested. 4 against 1 with a weapon involved and you came out without a scratch? John glanced at his father, who gave a small nod. My father has made sure I'm trained in self-defense, sir, John explained. I've studied various martial arts for the past 6 years. Colonel Carter added, as a military family, we've lived in some dangerous places. I wanted to make sure John could protect himself if needed. Well, it certainly came in handy today, Mr. Garcia said. Principal Scott sighed and turned to Kevin. What do you have to say for yourself, Kevin? Kevin looked up, his face a mix of anger and embarrassment. He made me look bad in front of everyone. He acts like he's better than me. I just wanted to scare him a little. With a knife? His father snapped. Do you have any idea how stupid that was? Officer Wilson picked up the switchblade. This is a serious weapon, son. You could be facing expulsion and criminal charges. Kevin's tough facade crumbled. Tears welled in his eyes. I didn't mean to really hurt him. I just wanted him to respect me. Respect is earned, not forced, John said quietly, repeating what he had told Kevin earlier. And definitely not at knife point. The room fell silent. Principal Scott looked thoughtful. Given the seriousness of this situation, he finally said, Kevin will be suspended for 2 weeks pending a board hearing to determine if expulsion is warranted. Dan, Pete, and Eric will each receive 1 week suspensions for their involvement. Mr. Ross started to protest, but Principal Scott held up his hand. This is non-negotiable, Mr. Ross. Your son brought a deadly weapon to my school and threatened another student. The only reason I'm not pushing for immediate expulsion is his previously clean record regarding weapons. Officer Wilson added, as for criminal charges, since John wasn't injured and this is Kevin's first weapons offense, I'm willing to recommend juvenile diversion instead of formal charges, provided Kevin agrees to counseling and community service. Kevin nodded quickly, relief visible on his face. His father placed a hand on his shoulder, squeezing it a little too tightly. Thank you, officer, Mr. Ross said. I promise you Kevin will face serious consequences at home as well. Principal Scott turned to John. As for you, John, while I understand you were defending yourself, we need to discuss your actions as well. Colonel Carter straightened. My son was attacked with a deadly weapon. He used minimal force to defend himself and protected the other boys from serious injury. What exactly needs to be discussed? Principal Scott held up his hands. No disciplinary action is being considered, Colonel. John did nothing wrong. But we need to talk about how to move forward. This incident will be the talk of the school by tomorrow morning. John nodded. He knew how school gossip worked. By tomorrow, everyone would know what had happened. Perhaps it would be best if John took a few days off, Principal Scott suggested. Give things a chance to cool down. That won't be necessary, John said firmly. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm not going to hide. His father looked at him, with a mix of pride and concern. Are you sure, son? Yes, sir, John replied. Running away won't solve anything. Principal Scott nodded. Very well. But I want you to check in with the counselor tomorrow just to talk through what happened. After a few more minutes of discussion, the meeting ended. Kevin and his friends were taken away by their parents. Officer Wilson left with the knife as evidence. As John and his father walked to their car, Colonel Carter was unusually quiet. Are you mad at me, Dad? John finally asked. Colonel Carter stopped walking and turned to face his son. No, John, I'm not mad, I'm worried. This is exactly the kind of situation we've tried to avoid. I didn't start it, John pointed out. I know that, his father replied. But you're different, John. You have skills most kids don't have. That comes with responsibility. I was careful, John said. I didn't hurt anyone seriously. Colonel Carter nodded. Yes, you showed restraint. That's good. He put his hand on John's shoulder. I'm proud of how you handled yourself. But this changes things. People will look at you differently now. John knew his father was right. His cover as just another quiet new kid was blown. People would have questions. They would look at him with either fear or admiration, neither of which he wanted. The next morning, John walked into school with his head held high. As expected, everyone was talking about what had happened. Students turned to stare as he passed in the hallway. Some quickly looked away when he met their eyes. Others watched with open curiosity. Ben caught up with him at his locker. Dude, is it true? Did you really take down Kevin and his whole gang when he pulled a knife on you? John sighed. News travels fast. Are you kidding? It's all anyone is talking about. Lisa told me what she saw in the parking lot before she left. Then Eric's little brother was texting everyone last night about the police coming to school. Great, John muttered. This was exactly what he had wanted to avoid. So, it's true, Ben pressed. You know martial arts or something? I've had some training, John admitted. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal? Ben's eyes widened. Kevin Ross has been terrorizing this school for years, and you took him down in like 2 minutes. That's huge. As they walked to class, more students approached John. Some just wanted to look at him up close. Others had questions. Did you really flip Kevin over your shoulder? Is it true you broke Dan's arm? Where did you learn to fight like that? John answered as briefly as he could. No, I didn't flip anyone. No, I didn't break any arms. I've trained in self-defense for years. In history class, Mr. Garcia gave John a small nod of approval. In the hallway between classes, even teachers seemed to look at him differently. At lunch, John tried to find a quiet corner to eat alone, but Lisa found him. Mind if I join you? She asked, setting her tray down. Free country, John replied with a small smile. Lisa sat down across from him. So you're the big hero now? John shook his head. I'm not a hero, I just defended myself. That's not how everyone else sees it, Lisa said. Kevin Ross has been making people's lives miserable for years. No one ever stood up to him before. I didn't want to stand up to him, John explained. I just wanted to be left alone. Lisa studied his face. You're not like most people, are you, John? John met her eyes. What do you mean? Most people would be enjoying the attention, bragging about their fighting skills. You seem uncomfortable with it all. John was silent for a moment. I've seen what violence really looks like, Lisa. It's not something to brag about. Lisa nodded as if his answer confirmed something she had suspected. My dad's a cop, he says the same thing. 2 weeks passed since the incident with Kevin and his friends. School life had slowly returned to normal for John, though things were different now. Students who had never spoken to him before now greeted him in the hallways. Younger students looked at him with admiration. Even some teachers seemed to treat him with a new kind of respect. John tried his best to ignore the attention. He still kept to himself, still focused on his studies, and still spent most of his free time with Ben, Lisa, and their small group of friends. But he couldn't deny that his place in the school had changed. Kevin and his friends were still suspended. The school board had decided against expulsion for Kevin, but he would be on strict probation for the rest of the year. One more serious incident, and he would be expelled. According to the school gossip, Kevin was also doing community service on weekends and attending mandatory counseling sessions. John was in the library during lunch period, working on a history paper, when the chair across from him scraped against the floor. He looked up to see Lisa sitting down with her lunch tray. Hiding out again? She asked with a small smile. Just working, John replied. This paper is due next week. Lisa nodded. You know, you're the only person I know who would choose to spend lunch in the library working on a paper that isn't due for a week. John shrugged. I like to stay ahead. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. John typing on his laptop, Lisa eating her lunch. Finally, Lisa spoke again. Kevin comes back tomorrow. John's fingers paused over the keyboard. I know. Are you worried? Lisa asked. John thought about it. Not really. I think he learned his lesson. I hope so, Lisa said, but she didn't sound convinced. Guys like Kevin don't usually change overnight. I don't expect him to change, John said, but I think he'll leave me alone now. Lisa studied his face. You're really not afraid of him, are you? John met her eyes. I'm not afraid of Kevin, but I am concerned about what might happen when he comes back. I don't want any more trouble. Lisa nodded, understanding. My dad says the same thing about his job. It's not about being afraid, it's about being prepared for what might happen. Your dad sounds like a smart man, John said. He wants to meet you, by the way, Lisa said. He was impressed when I told him how you handled yourself against 4 guys with a knife. John felt uncomfortable. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Why not? Lisa asked, genuinely curious. I don't like talking about what happened, John explained. I don't want to be known as the guy who beat up Kevin Ross. Lisa considered this. So what do you want to be known for? The question caught John off guard. No one had asked him that before. I don't know. Just for being me, I guess, not for fighting. Their conversation was interrupted by the bell signaling the end of lunch period. John closed his laptop and gathered his books. Think about meeting my dad, Lisa said as they walked out of the library. He's a good guy, and he makes amazing barbecue. John smiled. I'll think about it. The next day, Kevin returned to school. John saw him in the hallway between first and second periods. Kevin looked thinner and less confident than before. When he noticed John watching him, Kevin quickly looked away and hurried in the opposite direction. In PE class, Kevin kept his distance from John. The teacher had them playing basketball, and Kevin made sure he was on the opposite team from John. During the game, John noticed that Kevin was quieter than before, not shouting or boasting like he used to. After class, as John was changing in the locker room, he sensed someone behind him. He turned to find Kevin standing there looking uncomfortable. Can we talk? Kevin asked, his voice low so others wouldn't hear. John nodded and followed Kevin to a quiet corner of the locker room. I wanted to say, Kevin began, then stopped, as if the words were difficult to find. What I did was stupid. Bringing the knife, I mean. Yes, it was, John agreed simply. Kevin looked surprised, as if he had expected John to say it was okay. Anyway, he continued, I wanted you to know that I'm not going to bother you anymore. We don't have to be friends or anything, just no more trouble. John studied Kevin's face, trying to determine if he was sincere. That works for me, he finally said. No more trouble. Kevin nodded and walked away. John watched him go, feeling a mix of relief and caution. People could change, but it usually took time. He would keep his guard up around Kevin for a while. Later that day, John was walking home from school when a car pulled up beside him. It was Lisa in her small blue Honda. Need a ride? She asked, rolling down the window. John hesitated, then nodded. Thanks, he said as he got into the passenger seat. I saw you talking to Kevin in the gym, Lisa said as she drove. What did he want? He said he's going to leave me alone, John told her. No more trouble. Lisa raised an eyebrow. And you believe him? I'm not sure, John admitted. People can surprise you sometimes. They drove in silence for a few minutes. Then Lisa asked, So, have you thought about coming over to meet my dad? He's making his famous ribs this weekend. John smiled. Actually, I asked my dad about it last night. He said it's fine. Lisa's face lit up. Great. Saturday at 6? I'll text you the address. Sounds good, John replied. When Saturday arrived, John was nervous as he walked up to Lisa's front door. He had never been to a friend's house for dinner before. Their family had moved too often for him to form those kinds of friendships. The door opened before he could knock. Lisa stood there smiling. "You came, come on in, Dad's out back with the grill." John followed Lisa through the house to the backyard. Her home was warm and cozy, with family photos on the walls and comfortable furniture. It felt lived in and safe. In the backyard, a tall man with blonde hair like Lisa's was tending to a large grill. He wore an apron that said "The Grill Master" and held a pair of tongs in one hand. "Dad, this is John," Lisa said. "John, this is my dad, Officer Miller." Officer Miller turned and smiled, extending his hand. "Good to finally meet you. John, I've heard a lot about you." John shook his hand. "Nice to meet you too, sir." "No sir here," Officer Miller said with a laugh. "Call me Steve. Lisa tells me you handled yourself pretty well in that situation with the Ross kid." John felt himself tense up, but he replied, politely, "I just did what I had to do." Steve nodded, his expression becoming more serious. "That's usually how it goes. You did good, son, showed restraint, that's the hardest part." "That's what my dad says," John replied. "Your dad's a military man, right?" Steve asked as he turned back to the grill. "Yes, Army Colonel," John confirmed. 20 years of service. Steve nodded approvingly. "He taught you well." The evening was more enjoyable than John had expected. Lisa's mother, a kind woman named Carol, joined them for dinner. Ben was there too, along with his girlfriend, Nina. They ate delicious barbecue ribs, talked and laughed. For the first time in years, John felt like he was part of something normal. Something good. After dinner, Steve asked John to help him clear the table while the others went to watch a movie in the living room. "Lisa says you're thinking about joining the military after graduation," Steve said, as they carried plates to the kitchen. "I'm considering it," John replied. "It's what I know." Steve nodded thoughtfully. "It's a good path, honorable. But remember, there are other options too. With your abilities and calm under pressure, you'd make a good police officer." John had never considered that before. "I'll think about it," he said. "Do that," Steve replied with a smile. "We could use someone like you on the force." Later, as John was leaving, Lisa walked him to the door. "That wasn't so bad, was it?" she asked. "No," John admitted. "It was nice. Thank you for inviting me." Lisa smiled. "You're welcome here any time, John. I mean that." Walking home under the stars, John felt a strange new feeling growing inside him. For the first time since his mother left, he felt like he might belong somewhere. Westside High had started as just another school, another temporary stop in his nomadic life. Now it was becoming something more, a place where he had friends, a place where he might have a future. His father was waiting up when John got home. "How was dinner?" Colonel Carter asked. "Good," John replied. "Really good." His father studied his face and smiled. "I'm glad, son. You deserve some normal in your life." "Dad," John said, sitting down across from his father at the kitchen table, "I think I might want to stay here. After graduation, I mean." Colonel Carter nodded slowly. "I thought you might. This place seems good for you." "Is that okay?" John asked. His father reached across the table and placed his hand on John's shoulder. "Of course it's okay. All I've ever wanted is for you to find your own path. If that path is here, then this is where we'll stay." For the first time in years, John felt like his future was something to look forward to, not something to fear. He had faced one of his biggest challenges and come through it stronger. He had shown who he really was, not just a fighter, but someone who knew when to fight and when to show mercy. Whatever came next, John Carter was ready for it.